Chapter 1. Jonathan Weber had experienced much more than the 15 minutes of fame often allotted to mortals. The recognition brought about by his bestseller and his archaeological sleuthing in Israel that had saved Christianity, according to his fans, had given him entree at the Vatican, the White House, and even Buckingham Palace. Yet, despite a string of extraordinary adventures, John would always count the return of his wife from her dig at Pella as one of the summit events in his life. It was not only the joy of seeing Shannon again, that lithe, sapphire-eyed, pert-nosed Irish pixie who had taken him captive, but what she had brought back with her from Jordan as a little memento of her tour. A day after she had unpacked, John and Shannon took the manuscript leaves to his office at Harvard. In an adjoining room, he had a small but efficient manuscript laboratory with an ultraviolet apparatus as the centerpiece. It had served him well in exploring palimpsests, vellum manuscripts on which the writing had been erased and the vellum reused. The penetrating purplish rays of the instrument usually showed the original script quite clearly. Shannon adjusted the window blinds to darken the room, while John turned on the UV apparatus. The hum of its fan covered the throb of his almost audible pulse. "We're not looking for erasures here, Shannon," he said. "Just the original script underneath those brownish accretions." "Obviously, we could hardly make out anything at home last night, even with intense illumination." "Okay, we're ready. Bring the first page over." Shannon put on white gloves, opened a large portfolio, and, with care that bordered on a caress, lifted a protective muslin pad and extracted the first of the leaves. With both hands, she laid it on the examining field below the instrument. John peered closely at the document, studied it for some time, and then shook his head. "Here, have a look, sweetheart." Shannon scrutinized the leaf for several moments. "Oh, how disappointing. I can make out a little more of the lettering, but I'll raise the intensity." John turned the gain knob 30 degrees clockwise, but the brighter light, while revealing more of the Greek lettering, failed to liberate enough script for them even to try to reconstruct the text without much guesswork and the insertion of long blanks. Crestfallen, Shannon sighed. I'm sorry, John. I certainly had hoped for more than this. What an utter waste of effort." "Not necessarily, darling." John kissed her cheek. "Was it actually moistened with a tear?" "We'll do it just like they do at Palomar Mountain." "By which you mean?" "Our eyes can't store up light versus dark contrast. Film can. That's why stars that couldn't possibly be seen otherwise show up on their photo plates." "Got it," she chuckled. John opened his photo cabinet, pulled down a 35mm Nikon, and loaded it with panchromatic film. He mounted it in a camera bracket adjacent to the ultraviolet instrument and focused on the document. The shutter snapped repeatedly as he photographed at various speeds and diaphragm settings. They achieved no results that day, since from that point on it was trial and error, overexposure, underexposure. Too much contrast, not enough contrast. Finally, they hit upon a formula that worked. Inside a totally opaque chamber with a very low-intensity UV illumination of the leaves, the Nikon set at f/16, time exposure, and precision film development yielded beautifully readable Greek script on almost every line of the 5 pages of manuscript when printed out on photo paper. It took John another week to prize out a translation of the leaves. When he had finished, he gave Shannon copies of both the Greek text and his English translation. "You know Greek, honey," he said. "Please see if I got it right." Shannon started reading the translated version immediately. His own pulse in something of a gallop, John watched as her eyes widened and the jaw of his lovely wife sagged open. She looked up and said, "John, there are details here about the martyrdom of Jesus' brother James, beyond what we have from Eusebius." "Exactly." "Then do you suppose this is from Hegesippus?" "Who else? Some old librarian at the church must have tried to keep the secondary and primary sources together, as a bookmark no less." "Well, this is fabulous, John." "No, it isn't. You haven't come to the good part yet.